nations. One of the most notable being the free trade agreement between Mexico and Israel. This agreement opens the possibility of promoting strategic alliances between Israeli and Mexican companies that could participate in NAFTA and in the European Union markets, given that Mexico and Israel are the only two countries in the world that hold free trade agreements with both regions. Mexican trade comparative advantages are indeed important. However, I believe that Mexico is today a privileged investment destination for reasons which are perhaps more significant. Firstly, today Mexico has clear rules and transparent procedures, thanks to the determined fight against corruption that we have undertaken. Secondly, Mexico now offers certainty and security to investors, thanks to the strengthening of the rule of law to which we are committed. Not only we're dismantling all regulatory obstacles for entrepreneurship, but strongly supporting businesses and economic growth in all sectors. Moreover, our commitment to strengthening the fiscal balance reflects our firm belief that a robust economic growth requires a solid fiscal stance. The strength and competitiveness of the Mexican economy is now clearly recognized by international markets and is confirmed through a substantial volume of trade and investment. And fourthly, Mexico is currently promoting an economic development that is comprehensive, equitable, and sustainable. An economic development program that is addressed to including the poor, the excluded, and our 10 million brothers and sisters indigenous that we have in Mexico. We have so far made a great effort, and we're committed to becoming a world-class, educated country. Our nation has shown the courage to change and to embrace a new vision for the 21st century. We ask you to change your views about Mexico. We will be the next success story of our times and invite you to be part of this success. I encourage you to visit Mexico, to get to know us better, to invest in Mexico. We would like you to talk with your Mexico's Jewish community, some of whose most distinguished members are here with me today, so that you get an idea of what we can offer to each other. Amigas y amigos, I am pleased to count on the support of the Jewish communities, both in Mexico and the United States, in promoting a new, ever closer relationship between our countries. Today, Mexico and the United States are intricately bound by the profound ties that unite Mexico and Mexican-American communities. But we also have strong ties between our respective Jewish communities, which on a daily basis work for the benefit of our nations. I thank all my friends from the Jewish community in Mexico who have made this trip in order to be here with me during this important gathering. Likewise, I appreciate the warm, hospitable reception of the American Jewish Committee, a beacon of the Jewish community in the United States. The Jews, like the Mexicans, are people with a long history, a history of millennia. That is why we can sum up centuries of experience in a single word. As a toast, in Mexico, we say, salud, to your health. For these occasions, Jews have an even better word, a word that expresses the best hopes of all men and women and of all nations to life. Lejaim. Gracias.
President Fox, muchas gracias, salud, l'chaim, and shalom. Thank you for your stirring and significant and visionary remarks. They're deeply, deeply appreciated. In just over 100 days, President George W. Bush has already compiled a record of substantial accomplishment, highlighting the need to invest in public education, demanding an end to the current campaign of violence and hatred against Israel, and seeking a true and durable and secure peace in the Middle East. And, as it was just announced yesterday and commented upon by President Fox, expanding opportunities for qualified, undocumented immigrants to become full participants in American society. President Bush has demonstrated time and again, in ways both public and private, his sensitivity, his understanding, his compassion, respecting issues of concern to the Jewish community. My friends, it is a great personal honor and privilege to present the President of the United States, George W. Bush. I figure I owe you a dinner.
Thank you. Thank you all, please. Well, Bruce, thank you very much for that kind invitation. I'm glad I came, and I'm proud to call you friend. I appreciate, David Harris, your eloquence. I want to say welcome to the foreign dignitaries who are here, members of the Congress, Justice O'Connor, my friend Mayor Williams, and I'm proud to be here tonight with such close friends of America. Mi amigo, un hombre muy fuerte, muy inteligente, el presidente de México, Vicente Fox. Foreign Minister Fisher and Foreign Minister Perez. I had the honor of meeting with Foreign Minister Perez today in the Oval Office. It is not the first time we had met. He had a sparkle in his eye some 12 years ago when we met. He still has this marvelous sparkle in his eye. I love his optimism. As Bruce mentioned, he said when you talk to Shimon Peres, you feel like you're talking to a poet. You know you're talking to a leader. He's been a good friend of the United States throughout his many years of public service. And I look forward to showing him my friendship for the state of Israel over the coming years. And Mr. Fisher, welcome to Washington. Please take back my best regards to your Chancellor. I had a great visit with him as well in the Oval Office. And Mr. President, thank you for coming by. He also was in the Oval Office. Had a pretty busy day. This is the third time I met with President Fox. And it's right that it be that way, because relations with Mexico and the United States are incredibly important for our future. We want our friend to the south to be strong and vibrant, a strong Mexico, a healthy Mexico, is good for the United States of America. The four of us don't always agree. We occasionally have our differences. But one thing, obviously, we all agree on is when Bruce Raymer invites us somewhere, we go. I took a look at this weekend's program before coming here. I was flattered to read that understanding the new administration is called a central feature of this year's meeting. Well, I may be able to save you some time. I believe in equal opportunity for all, without discrimination or prejudice of any kind. I believe that tolerance and respect must be taught to all our children, because too many young minds and souls are lost to hate. I believe that our government should support the works of charity that are motivated by faith, but our government should never fund the teaching of faith itself. I am a Christian, but I believe with the psalmist that the Lord God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Understanding my administration should not be difficult. We will speak up for our principles. We will stand up for our friends in the world. And one of the most important friends is the state of Israel. Incredibly enough, when I visited Israel 2 years ago, I had the honor of touring many parts of that land in a helicopter with Ariel Sharon. I'm pretty confident he didn't think I was going to be the president. Truth is, I wasn't sure he was going to be the prime minister. But nevertheless, here we are. I look forward to working with the prime minister. As Foreign Minister Perez told me today, and I agree, he's a man who knows how to keep his word. And that's important when it comes to foreign diplomacy. For a Texan, a first visit to Israel is an eye-opener. At the narrowest point, it's only 8 miles from the Mediterranean to the old armistice line. That's less than from the top to the bottom of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. The whole of pre-1967 Israel is only about 6 times the size of the King Ranch. It's a small country that has lived under the threat throughout its existence. At my first meeting of the National Security Council, I told them that a top foreign policy priority of my administration is the safety and security of Israel. My administration will be steadfast in supporting Israel against terrorism and violence, and in seeking the peace for which all Israelis pray. The Middle East is the birthplace of 3 great religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Lasting peace in the region must respect the rights of believers in all these faiths. That's common sense. But it's also something more. It is moral sense, based upon the deep American commitment to freedom of religion. That commitment was expressed early and eloquently by our first president, George Washington, in his famous letter to the Truro Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island. He argued for an attitude beyond mere tolerance, a respect for the inherent and equal right of everyone to worship God as they think best. The government of the United States, he said, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens. Over the years, Washington's rejection of religious bigotry has matured from a foundation of our domestic politics into a guiding doctrine of our foreign policy. The American Jewish Committee deserves special credit for this progress. You were among the very first groups to support the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. Formed to resist anti-Semitic persecution in Tsarist Russia, the American Jewish Committee has emerged as a great champion of religious liberty worldwide. I'm proud to say that it was a fellow Texan, Leo Napoleon Levi, who was responsible for one of the earliest American protests against anti-Semitic violence. Levi, a Galveston, Texas lawyer, and the president of the National B'nai B'rith, drafted President Theodore Roosevelt a telegram denouncing a Russian pogrom in 1903. The Tsar of Russia was so stung by Roosevelt's message that he formally refused to accept it. Some Americans complained that Roosevelt had gone too far. He replied that there were crimes so monstrous that the American conscience had to assert itself. And there still are. Such crimes are being committed today by the government of Sudan, which is waging war against that country's traditionalist and Christian peoples. Some 2 million Sudanese have lost their lives. 4 million more have lost their homes. Hospitals, schools, churches, and international relief stations have often been bombed by government warplanes over the 18 years of Sudan's civil war. The government claims to have halted air attacks, but they continue. Women and children have been abducted and sold into slavery. UNICEF estimates that some 12,000 to 15,000 people are now held in bondage in Sudan. The story of the Exodus still speaks across the millennium. No society in all of history can be justly built on the backs of slaves. Sudan is a disaster area for human rights. The right of conscience has been singled out for special abuse by the Sudanese authorities. Aid agencies report that food assistance is sometimes distributed only to those willing to undergo conversion to Islam. We must turn the eyes of the world upon the atrocities in the Sudan. Today, I've appointed a special humanitarian coordinator, USAID Administrator Andrew Natsios. He will provide the leadership necessary to ensure that our aid goes to the needy without manipulation by those ravaging that troubled land. This is the first step. More will follow. Our actions begin today, and my administration will continue to speak and act for as long as the persecution and atrocities in the Sudan last. I'm pleased to say that many countries in the region show considerable and improving respect for religious liberty. Morocco, Tunisia, Jordan, and Bahrain among them. But there are other regimes, not only in North Africa and the Middle East, whose disrespect for freedom of worship is seriously disturbing. Iraq murders dissident religious figures. Iran systematically maltreats Jews, Christians, and adherents of the Baha'i faith. The Burmese junta tortures adherents of Islam, Buddhism, and Christianity. Cuba monitors and harasses independent priests and ministers. Afghanistan's Taliban government has horrified the world with its disdain for fundamental human freedoms, epitomized by its destruction of ancient Buddhist works of art. And the newly independent republics of Central Asia impose troubling limits on religious expression and missionary work. We view with special concern the intensifying attacks on religious freedom in China. In many respects, China has made great strides toward freedom in recent decades. China's economy has opened. Chinese people enjoy greater personal mobility, more secure property rights, and enlarged access to information. These are not small achievements, and they do promise even greater change. But the Chinese government continues to display an unreasonable and unworthy suspicion of freedom of conscience. The Chinese government restricts independent religious expression. We hear alarming reports of the detention of worshipers and religious leaders. Churches, mosques have been vandalized or demolished. Traditional religious practices in Tibet have long been the target of especially harsh and unjust persecution. And most recently, adherents of the Falun Gong spiritual movement have been singled out for arrest and abuse. China aspires to national strength and greatness. But these acts of persecution are acts of fear and therefore of weakness. This persecution is unworthy of all that China has been, a civilization with a history of tolerance. And this persecution is unworthy of all that China should become, an open society that respects the spiritual dignity of its people. No one is better witness to the transience of tyranny than the children of Abraham. 40 centuries ago, the Jewish people were entrusted with a truth more enduring than any power of man. In the words of the prophet Isaiah, "This shall be my covenant with them, said the Lord. My spirit which is upon you, and the words which I have placed in your mouth, shall not be absent from your mouth, nor from the mouth of your children, nor from the mouth of your children's children, said the Lord, from now for all time." It is not an accident that freedom of religion is one of the central freedoms in our Bill of Rights. It is the first freedom of the human soul, the right to speak the words that God places in our mouths. We must stand for that freedom in our country. We must speak for that freedom in the world. And I thank the American Jewish Committee for your willingness to do both. God bless.